Welcome to the weather forecast on the CIA TV channel. Dear friends, in today's forecast, we're breaking down what you need to know about the weather that will affect the United States over the next 7 days. The weather is about to change dramatically as a major hurricane is likely to hit the Atlantic Ocean in the next few days, and this storm could approach the United States. But it could also impact Bermuda and the Greater Antilles. Additionally, some major flooding is likely to continue today across the Central Plains and Midwest, with severe weather including strong winds and hail. And we'll start with what's happening across the country today. And right now, across the Central Plains, there are some major thunderstorms. These storms are not only bringing severe weather, including strong winds and hail, but also flooding, which has been a major concern in just the past few hours in Kansas, Oklahoma, and western Missouri. On the other hand, heavy rain in Wisconsin. And finally, we are facing almost a 1 in 1,000 year flood event in a few select locations in and around Milwaukee. In fact, in many places we have had up to 12 inches of rain in a very short period of time. There's a greater than 90% chance at this point that this storm will become a tropical storm or hurricane in the next few days. And even if you're looking at this forecast, it could actually be named Tropical Storm Erin because this tropical wave has been building rapidly over the last 12 hours. But it has the potential to become at least a tropical storm anyway. But if it doesn't, it's likely to become a hurricane as it approaches the central Atlantic. And then, later this week, this storm will get very close to the Lesser Antilles. And from there, this storm could go anywhere. We can see this storm heading out to sea, which is obviously what we want to happen, but it could also head toward the United States. So in this forecast, we're going to analyze all the different scenarios that could happen because I'm pretty concerned that it's going to become at least a Category 2 hurricane, if not a major hurricane, as it continues to move westward in a very favorable environment. And I think it's already a tropical depression, if not a tropical storm. The wind gusts have been measured at least around 3,540 miles per hour. In addition to the winds continuing to move westward, it's right now just west of Africa. But it's almost certainly going to be a fairly strong tropical storm and even a low-level hurricane as we get closer to Wednesday and Thursday. And then by the end of the week, it's likely to become a major hurricane. The models are clearly showing it's very likely to become a hurricane in about 4 days. So around Thursday into Friday, this is likely to be a hurricane. But on top of that, we have a very favorable environment across the Atlantic. We've had virtually no tropical systems in the Atlantic so far this year. So it makes sense that this storm would likely become a major hurricane very quickly and almost certainly a major hurricane by the end of the week. However, it's unlikely that this storm will have much impact on any land at this point. But obviously, after this point, things are going to get a lot more concerning, as it gets closer to the larger Antilles, and potentially even impact the United States if it tracks more westerly. And it could impact Bermuda as well. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the possible scenarios for this particular tropical system. So, our little low-pressure system is back in the eastern Atlantic as of today. Look, this storm is just northeast of the Lesser Antilles. It's almost certainly a mid to upper level tropical storm, if not a hurricane at this point. So, this storm could start to have some impacts if you go back into the Lesser Antilles. Our high-pressure system, the Bermuda High, is going to play a big role in determining the exact track of this storm. Basically, if our Bermuda High were weaker, this storm could potentially turn out to sea and potentially impact Bermuda. But that would at least mitigate any major impacts to the United States. This is the most likely scenario right now, but keep that in mind until we officially get a tropical storm or even a hurricane. It's going to be very difficult to describe the exact track of this storm. The other scenario is a little less likely, but it's possible that our Bermuda High is still stronger and this storm system actually moves more to the west, leading to somewhere in the United States. But obviously if it moves more to the west and really gets closer to land, there could be some major issues with flooding, storm surge, hurricane force winds. This is not an extremely likely scenario. I think right now we have about a 20% chance that this storm will move within 100 miles of the United States, including the center. We could also see a middle scenario where it's somewhere between these two storms and it's sort of headed towards New England or somewhere closer to the East Coast. Either way, the United States is going to be impacted. Whatever scenario plays out with the intensity of this storm, there's going to be at least some rip currents and higher waves along the East Coast. Otherwise, there's about an 80% chance that this storm will move out to sea. But obviously, that 1 in 5 chance is something you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on. Make sure you're prepared for a storm in case something does happen. So even if it's a weaker high pressure system, it could still be not too far away from the United States and it could still have some impact. If it does go that way, it could potentially impact New England and Nova Scotia, but again, it's too early to make any assumptions about that. I think in about 2 days we will definitely have more information on the exact track of this storm. Now, let's talk more about the severe weather potential over the next few days, starting today. And we have 2 marginal severe weather threats in place. One of them will be back in Texas, Oklahoma and New Mexico, and another in the upper Midwest. I could also see a marginal threat added near Chicago and northern Missouri today. The biggest concern would be strong winds and localized hail. We could see a sub-zero risk of tornadoes returning to Iowa, Missouri and northwestern Illinois. In fact, we had a brief tornado yesterday in southeast Iowa, and as we head into tomorrow, the severe weather threat is very low across the board. We have an ongoing severe weather threat, including Green Bay, Wisconsin back into the upper peninsula of Michigan with strong winds and localized hail possible. There will also be some potentially damaging winds returning to the Texas Panhandle and far western Oklahoma tonight into early tomorrow morning. And finally, the weather will clear out across the Central Plains. Back in the Midwest today, we expect a band of storms to move across Iowa and northern Missouri. That storm will break up as it moves toward Milwaukee and Chicago tonight. These are areas that have seen a lot of rain over the last 48 hours. We expect a few more scattered showers and thunderstorms with the risk of damaging winds and localized hail. However, the main threat will be back near Green Bay. However, there may be a small threat in the forecast for parts of Michigan and northern Indiana. That's wind and hail. However, it's going to be fairly dry on Wednesday. So if you have any open plains, it looks like it's going to be a good day for those areas. Then back to the northern plains, there could be some storms today. Back to North Dakota and Minnesota. And then we're going to see a return of localized severe weather in the Dakotas, where there could be some localized hail and wind, a low risk of tornadoes. I think Thursday and Friday have more severe weather potential in the northern plains. So we definitely need to keep a close eye on this upcoming storm. It looks concerning. If it gets closer to the United States, we could have some big problems. So we need to keep an eye on this. We will continuously update the storm situation in the next news. Please subscribe to the channel to follow. Thank you for watching the news on CIA TV channel.